să-mi permiteți acum să mă adresez și invitațiilor în limba engleză. My name is Dumitrescu. I'm the Consul representative from the Romanian General Consulate in Chicago. We would like to thank the representatives of the District Attorney Office for organizing this outreach activity. And we'd like to thank you for attending as well this event. I hope it will be on a number of issues and topics that are of interest for the Romanian American community. I would like also to allow Mrs. Agnes, the chairman of the Atlantic Society for Romanian Language and Culture, to also greet you and our guests. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for coming. For me as an immigrant who came in this country 10 years ago, knowing my rights was one of my priorities when I moved in USA. Took a lot of time, because when I came I didn't speak at all English, to have access to the information in order to move forward with my life, to know where I am and what I need to do in order to get education's rights in different fields. The reason why, together with the Attorney General Office and the Romanian Consulate General, I created this event, was 100% for the information, in order to get access to the right information from the right person. Because so many times we are informed, but from second-hand informators, and unfortunately we are not getting nowhere. So thanks for coming. I would like to introduce Nettie Lasko. She's from Attorney General Office, the main person in charge of the seminar. I'm so glad to have her today.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. I know it's a Saturday, I know it's busy, but for us, it's an honor to be here because we like to help the community and inform the community. My name is Nettie Lasko, and I work for the Office of Attorney General Raul, and I am the Immigrant Assistance Program Coordinator, and I work with all the consulates, there are 82 consulates. I work very closely with the Consulate of Romania, and we spoke with the Consul in Alina like 2 months ago. It would be important, Alina approached me, it would be important for us to bring the information to you. There's a lot of questions about immigration, about consumer fraud, a lot of different questions that today you will be able to ask the questions and not to be afraid to ask the questions, because even though our offices in a law office, we don't ask for social security, we don't ask for the immigration status. For us, it doesn't matter if you're undocumented. You can ask any questions and we're happy to answer the questions. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the office, what the office does, and then I will introduce my colleague, and also respecting a lawyer for immigration to speak about immigration. He's running late because of the traffic, but he will be here. And I assume that all of you will have more questions for him than for us. But, so the Office of the Attorney General is a big office, and the Attorney General is the chief legal, but another word I was going to use simple. He's the lawyer for the office, for the state of Illinois. Okay, so he's the top law enforcement office. So he enforces the law. He protects the consumers against consumer fraud. He litigates. He legislates with legislators in Springfield to make sure that the laws are in favor of the community. Also, even though he's the Attorney General and we enforce the law, we have the immigrant community. That's very important for us to inform, because you don't have to be worried or afraid to ask any questions or go to our office. So that's very important to announce. So our office has different divisions. We have consumer fraud, that's the biggest division. And later my colleague will explain to you a little bit, and details about what Consumer Flow Division does, because it's the biggest one. Then we have charitable trust, we have child support, what the disability, civil rights, labor issues, well, the division of healthcare, and I will talk today about healthcare and labor issues because I think they're important to our community. Then we have the Immigrant Assistance Program, that's my program. My program really is to reach out to all the communities and give the information. That's really what the program is. Do seminars like we're doing today. We work with the consulates, we work with community organizations to do seminars. I'm going to be talking a little bit about labor issues because right now we have some complaints. I don't know if any of you work in factories, on restaurants, or somebody. Some companies are paying with payday cards, payroll cards. It's like a credit card. And the employee doesn't know that the company are taking, every time you use the card, if you ever use it, you pay $5, okay? And those $5 come from your salary, and the employer don't tell you anything. So for the last 2 years, the previous Attorney General made it law that they should not pay with the payday cards. They should send the money directly to your account, or pay you in cash or with check. But in case they pay you with these cards, like a credit card, you have to tell your employee that you want the employee to pay the $5 every time you use the card, okay? This happened 2 years ago. I still talk about it because some companies are still using those pay cards. Also, even if you are not documented, you have the same rights that any American citizen has. You work 40 hours, you're supposed to get paid 40 hours. Your time and a half, if you work more than 40 hours, you're supposed to get the time and a half. It's very important because sometimes we assume, I am from Colombia, we assume, well, I'm not documented, so they can pay whatever they want to pay. No, I have the same rights that any American citizen. That's very, very important. Also very important that they pay you when you check bounce, because that happens in restaurants sometimes or small companies. You have the right to file a complaint with the Labor Department, and also you can file a complaint with our office. But the Labor Department will follow the restaurants or the company, and then they work with us. So we investigate the case together. It happens in the last 3 years about bouncing checks, because companies don't have the money, so they give you a check, the check bounce once, check bounce twice, and then you lose the money. Okay? It happens many times. So we start doing the seminars. That if this happened to you, you can still file a complaint with the Labor Department. I'll give you the information where to file the complaint, and you can file a complaint with our office. It's very, very important. Also, we found out about restaurants. I'm going to give you examples of restaurants, Chinese buffet. There are a lot of Chinese buffets, a lot of restaurants. They hired employees, and they were asked them to live in the basement of the owner of the restaurant, okay? And they had like 20 employees working for the restaurant and living in the basement, okay? And they were taking like the passport away or any identifications, okay? This is trafficking labor. And now it's a big thing because we're getting more complaints. It's happening. You may know somebody. They're afraid to say anything because they're undocumented. Even if they're undocumented, they have to file a complaint. So our office investigated these Chinese restaurants, and they were closed. We won the case, it took 3 years, and then finally last September, we won the case in the newspaper. Very, very important. But right now we have another case with the Guatemalan community. A lady brought 40 undocumented people from Guatemala. She paid somebody to bring them in Cicero, and they live in her house, in her basement. And she's not getting their pay. And then found a job for them in a factory. So they all work at the same factory. They get paid, but this lady is taking the money away from them. Okay? So they're not making any money. They're afraid to go out. Somebody spoke to somebody. And so we are investigating that case right now. It's in Cicero. I don't know if you know where Cicero is. It's happening, this is the
It
case
was
right
on the
now.
news too.
Huh?
It was on the news.
Yes.
too.
So that's what I'm talking about, this labor issue, because I think it's right now a very important issue. Also happens with the Ukrainian community, may happen with the Romanian community. You know, people, they come because they promise them they will find a job, you know, and then when they get here, they don't give them a job. They use them as, I don't know, I don't want to say the word, but like a prostitutes, okay? And then we had a case with Ukrainian 3 years ago. Beautiful. They brought it in, and they were living in like 40s, somebody's house, and then they were able to go out. So we're investigating all this case. This is trafficking labor, like human trafficking. So it happens a lot in our communities. So you know anybody in the Romanian community telling them not to be afraid, file the complaint. They have to find out. They can file complaint with the police, from the guard office. It's a big thing. It's happening a lot because our countries, our communities, they need to come here to work, or they would like to come here to work. They don't know how difficult it is. Okay, so it is difficult for all of us. So this country is the dream, you know, country, but we go through a lot to be able to go somewhere. It's very difficult. So that's labor. What I love about healthcare, very important also. We have division, we have director who's a doctor. So you get doctor bills or dentists, eye doctors, and you get the bills with services you never receive, x-rays, medicine, that you never receive the medicine. But it's important that we check our bills when we get the bills from the doctors or from the hospital. You know, sometimes we were very lazy, at least the Latinos. We don't really do it. We put it away. Oh, so much, $900, $10,000. But why? But we don't know anything about it. So you have to check. And then find out why it's so high. And then if you think there's some services that you never receive, then you can probably complain in our office. You know, and I was some information that we have somebody who take the complaint, then they will call you to give you permission to talk to the doctor or to the hospital to go through the bill and find out, do you give this, the x-rays, do you give this medicine to the patient? And we go through it. It's not true, then we make sure that either you don't have to pay, or if you already paid, then you get your money back. So, only to file the complaint. It's very important. Also, you buy an insurance, medical insurance. And then you go to the doctor and they say, oh, this doesn't cover, the insurance doesn't. And you were told that the insurance will cover everything. It happens a lot. You can probably complain in our office with that. Then I'll speak a little bit about Medicaid. Medicaid from, it's mostly for nursing homes or for seniors. So we have 2 cases last year. Let's see. And that happens in our communities because we're very family oriented. We are. So I will ask my sister to help with my husband in Ohio for her to get paid through the state. Okay? And then my sister is working also at the same time. And then we send the bill to the state to get paid for the hours that she worked for me and helping my husband. Okay? And then they find out how can she work for me and she's still working in her job. But we have a case, and this lady now is going to be in jail. I don't know if you remember that this case, Agnieszka. It happened last year. Okay? She was taking care of her mom, and then she filed, like it was like $42,000, because her mom was at home for a little time, and then she went to the nursing home. But her daughter was still sending the bills. So she got paid, now she's going to get the money, and she's going to go to jail. Okay. Then we had a case of a husband who's taking care of his wife. He should not charge for taking care of his wife. And it's happening a lot. They say the patients are in a nursing home or assisted living, and the family are charging the state. So we have a lot of different cases. What else I was going to talk about? Immigration, that's the most important one. And now that I have my colleague here. Immigration from. I just studied, so I can't introduce anybody. So immigration law, what is important for us to know? Remember, we immigrants, we think, I don't know in your country, but in my country, the notaries, they're lawyers. And here, you can go to any place and they will verify your signature and put the stamp. But it's not a lawyer. But a lot of us go to these people to ask for help for immigration. And what happened with these cases? We believe in the person, oh, I will help you with immigration, I will help you get in the papers, I'll get you the work permit, I'll help with your sister or the whole family, and you can pay me $40,000, don't worry, I know somebody in immigration, and they will show you a paper that looks real from immigration, okay? And then they charge you for that paper that's not even real, and the person pays $40,000 and, oh, I went to a lawyer. It's not a lawyer. So you go looking for services for immigration, you need any help, it's better to go to a lawyer who is an immigration lawyer. Okay. You go to an organization that says services provided for immigration, this organization has to be registered with our office, and they have to have a sign in English and Romanian, or in Polish, or in Spanish, saying that they are not lawyers, but they're helping with immigration services. What they do, they help you with the English, they help you with the citizen class, they help you with the fingerprints, they help you with the English classes, and they're supposed to charge only $20. Okay? It's not 40,000, it's not 10,000, it's not 300. So it's very important. If you go to this person and notary, and they're charging this money, you have to file a complaint with our office. Right now, we have somebody, my colleague told me about it, in the Polish community. A lady is working as a lawyer, and she's not a lawyer. And she's charging money to this. She will tell you a little bit about it, I don't know too much on this case. She's asking the Polish community, I'm a lawyer, you have to pay me so much money. And she's pretending she's a lawyer. And we believe that. So please don't. Do not believe that these lawyers are lawyers. You have to go to a lawyer, immigration lawyer. Don't pay any money because you're losing your money. We had another case with the Spanish community in Waukegan, a lady who supposedly is a lawyer, immigration lawyer, and she took money from three different families, so she owns now like $100,000 to these 3 different families. She works from her house. Our office investigated her already 3 times. She has no money. But she works from her house, and then she goes to Mexico, and she comes back. We're going after her, but that happens everywhere, in any communities. I don't know that happens in the Romanian community. If you know anybody, please file a complaint with our office. Because they're taking money away from your friends. Well, we're going to have the questions and answers at the end. Now I'm going to introduce my colleague Agnieszka, who's going to be speaking in detail about the consumer fraud and what she does in the cases. Agnieszka has been working in our office for 14 years already. And I invited her to do this presentation because she used to do community outreach like I do, so she understands the community. Any lawyer can come, but it's not the same. You know, lawyers speak like a lawyer, so it's different. So we understand that my friend the lawyer, he will speak like us, even though he's a lawyer. Well, thank you so much, and now my colleague Agnieszka.
Thank you, Nettie.
So, as Nettie mentioned, one of the divisions in our office is the Consumer Fraud Division. That's, I believe, the largest division. And just to give you an idea why we are the largest, why we have the largest number of attorneys and advocates, mediators, it's because we process and mediate between 20 and 35,000 complaints every year. And the reason we receive them in the first place is because, well, for many reasons, because unfortunately fraud is happening, people want to report it, but because we have a free mediation service. So before you pay an attorney to help resolve a consumer fraud case, you can file a complaint with our office completely for free. And what we do is then, when we receive your complaint, we process it in our system, and we send the business that you're complaining about a copy of your complaint, and then we ask them to respond within 10 days. Then hopefully they respond, we give you a copy, and then you have a chance to respond back. We try to resolve the case Many times we can, many times we can't. Let me backtrack. I just realized I didn't explain what defines consumer fraud. So you are a consumer if you purchase a product or a service. So we can't do private civil cases when you borrow someone money and then they don't pay you back. That's a private civil matter. But you actually have to spend money. Someone promised you that they would complete a service or sell you a product, and it's either you never receive it or you don't get what was promised to you. Then we can help in that relationship where you are the consumer and it's a business or an individual that promised you to complete a service or provide you with a product. So when we, as I mentioned, we try to mediate these cases. Many times the businesses respond and try to help you help resolve the matter and make the consumer happy. But especially in cases where it's fraudulent individuals or businesses just created just to fraud people, they don't respond. And so when we see that, when our office starts collecting these complaints and we see 5, 10, 15 complaints we're receiving in a short amount of time, then we open an investigation. And that's when people like myself, so I'm an attorney in the office, I receive the investigation and I look into the company. I do background information, and we as the Attorney General's office have what is called pre-litigation power. So it does not have to be a lawsuit for us to be able to contact the company and say, we want to see these records, and you have to come in for questions. So that's what I'm able to do when I receive an investigation against a company. And this is why Nettie likes to invite me to these kinds of presentations, because I can tell you about the kinds of cases that I'm working on and what our office is interested in, what we see, what kinds of patterns of fraud we see. So one of the largest kinds of scams we see is in home repair, because we all either live in an apartment or rent or a house, and after some time we have necessary repairs, or we just want a more modern place to live in, and so we spend money on home repair. And one of the brochures that I recommend that you pick up that Nettie has brought for us is this home repair brochure. It gives you a lot more contractor tips on what to look out for when you're shopping and when a contract is presented to you. Under Illinois law, any contract for home repair over $1,000 requires that this kind of an acknowledgement form is signed. I will tell you that it's definitely still not happening. And contractors can get sued for not providing this to you. What are your rights under home repair? I recently did some remodeling work on my home, and unfortunately the contractor didn't present this to me, so he received a lesson from me as well. So I know personally that they're still not presenting this to you. And what we've seen is either they promise this service of repairing your home, people give down payments, and then the individual never appears. Those are clear-cut lawsuits. When we see that kind of fraud, we file lawsuits right away. But in cases where they've done some work but haven't come back, those are a little bit more gray area, but with enough examples, we do file lawsuits. I file lawsuits, and we try and get the money back for the consumer. I know that then they have to spend more money to find someone else, but at least we try to make them whole in getting the money back for you, the consumer. But what we also ask the judge is to prohibit this person from running a contractor business ever again. And we get those kinds of judgments. Unfortunately, they still go out and they still sell the service. They can in this kind of a case, they can still work for someone, but they cannot own, run, or manage a company, because clearly they don't know how to manage, so these people are not getting their work done. And so in situations, I've had situations where they break their promise not to run a business, not to sell home repair services. That's when we can actually file criminal charges, because they are then violating a promise they made before a judge, saying, I will not do this anymore. That is called civil contempt or criminal contempt because they're violating the civil promise that they made, or promise they made in civil court. And I've actually had a judge agree when we, the state, present to them that this person should go to jail for violating the promise they made. And I've had an individual that was in jail in the sense that he did what was called work release. Because we also understand that, you know, if we send someone to jail, then they're out of their current job and they're just going to fraud more people if we make them lose their job. So they were actually only allowed to work during the day and then have to go to prison at night and for 30 days. So, I mean, we have to teach them a lesson and somehow, you know, make sure that there's consequences for their behavior. So that's, you know, about home repair. Another large area or a large amount of investigations I have is into car dealerships. So I also encourage you, there's two great brochures that we have. One we have here with us and one is available on our website. The one that we have here with us is the Consumer Guide to Buying a Used Vehicle, and the other one is about buying a new vehicle. So I encourage you to take a look at these. But if I can sum up these brochures very quickly for you, and what I see in our investigations is that the consumer is very, very unprepared and uneducated before they go to purchase a vehicle. You have to do your homework if you want to pay the best or the least amount of money or to get the best deal for yourself. You have to do the homework. So we provide websites on where you can go to check what should be the value of your car. These brochures also explain what to look for. So with the new car, you can check for rebates. What are the rebates available to you? It explains what the Monroney sticker price is, but that really doesn't matter in the sale of a vehicle. It tells you what terms to look for and what websites to look up what is the value that the dealer has actually paid for the car, so that you pay as close to how much the dealer paid, and so that they are not scamming you out of large amounts of money. It also discusses warranties and when you should look into a warranty, when you should not. So if you are, if you intend to keep your vehicle for many, many years, then maybe an extended warranty makes sense. But if you like to change your cars every 3-4 years, then it doesn't make sense, because if you're buying a new car, it already comes with a 3-year warranty in most cases. So details like this are provided within these brochures. What I've seen is the investigations that I have are in situations where someone is trading in a vehicle to purchase a new vehicle, and it doesn't have to be a new car they're buying, even a used car, but their old car, the one that they are trying to trade in, still has an unpaid loan on it. And in that situation, the dealer is agreeing, when they are determining the price of the car they are selling to you, they take into account your loan and within the new price, and they are agreeing to pay off the amount that you still owe on your old car. But when the dealer is going out of business, they already are in debt and not paying off many, many debts that they have. They don't pay off that loan. And so what happens is consumers are in a situation where they no longer have the car because it was traded in and sold by the dealer, but the lien holder, the bank, is still sending statements for the unpaid loan amounts. So people are paying off 2 cars when they only have 1 in their possession. Illinois is one of only a few states that created a fund called the Dealer Recovery Trust Fund. And that's a lot of work that I do for this kind of situation. So if someone finds out that their car was not paid off by the dealer is out of business, so there's no way to reach anyone, they qualify for this fund. I take in the consumer cases. You fill out a claim packet, you attach the bill of sale and a few other documents. I also work up the case to make sure that we know where the car is now and what happened to that car. And then I present it to a board in Springfield who votes to then approve these claims to get them paid. So these loans from $1,000 to I've had $30,000 get paid off by this fund. And the best part is the fund was created, funded with money that all the dealerships in Illinois had to give $500 to create this fund. So they're paying for the mistakes of their colleagues. And hopefully they don't make those mistakes in the future. I also investigate dealerships for advertising violations. They're not supposed to offer free gifts with a sale. They tend to do that, so even if you receive a gift and you're happy about it, because you received a gift with the sale, that should be reported to our office because they are violating. And even if you might think, oh, what's the big deal? My most recent investigation into a dealership is a dealer that went out of business this past March. I was informed by the Better Business Bureau in October and November that for ad violations, they were giving out lawnmowers and all bikes and grills and all kinds of things, just trying to get people to come in, to bring in their trade-ins, sell them a new car. They paid none of those loans out. I have 102 vehicles whose loans were not paid off, totaling $1.4 million. So I got the investigation as an ad violation only for it to explode into this, massive dealer recovery fund claim that I now have over 100 consumers that I'm going to help pay off their loans, but their credits are ruined because the dealer has not paid since February, March. So we're working with the banking institutions to say, please don't go after the consumer. They've been a victim of fraud. Please don't affect their credit history. Any of the vehicles that were still on the lot, the banks have repossessed, but they put the repossession on the consumer's history because they still have a contract with the consumer. So that's why I'm saying, like, it starts with the little things like ad violations because they're desperate and it can escalate to something like I have right now. And then the immigration case that Nettie mentioned, yes, there's a woman who is selling the service of finding your relative a job in Canada and then a Canadian visa, but taking money from people here in Chicago. So that's something that we're looking into. She's not a licensed attorney and she's not registered with the Board of Immigration Appeals or with our office. So we're definitely looking into her activity because there's a big violation there. And of course, she's not completing any of the work. She's just promising people, and then disappearing or not returning their calls. So I think that's more or less most of the kinds of investigations that I have.
Sorry, who is
Yes.
this person? This
We're gonna say
I can't, yeah, when I have an
investigating.
open investigation, I can't say the names, yeah.
But, okay, now I'm going to introduce my colleague. But first I want to say thank you again to Alina and the Consul General from Romania for organizing this seminar. I think it's very important to the community. Thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here. I think it's very, very important. And thank you to my colleague, because it's Saturday, so we're here. I think honored to be here. And now I have my dear friend, Salvador Cicero. I'm working with him for I know him for a long time. And the reason I invited him is because he's an immigration lawyer. He doesn't work in our office, but he helps us doing seminars. And he will be able to give you an update on what is happening with immigration and also answer your questions, okay? So I invited him when he's able to do, most of the time he is always there for us when I do these seminars. And I think it's important to bring somebody who's not in the office, in my office. Because in my office we cannot give you any advice about immigration. But he is, and he used to be a diplomat at the Mexican Consulate, was a consul. And I know him for the last 18 years or more. So we've been working together in this seminar. So thank you. Now, you please can talk to them. Thank you.
Well, we say, in Mexico we say, buenas tardes, and in Romania we say, bun ziua. Okay, I'm gonna practice that. All I know how to say is foarte frumoasă, but that's not applicable.
It's a good start.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
I don't know if the guys like that, but yeah.
Well,
The girls are all for it, right? Well, so let me tell you a little bit about my practice and my experience. I worked with a lot of Romanian people. Unfortunately, I would say 80% of the people that I work with are people who are already like in a bad situation. So that's why when Nettie told me, hey, we're working with the Romanian Consulate, it's like, let's go, right? When you have friends in a certain community, so it's good because you give them information and you hope that that community trickles down. I found out that in Chicago, the Romanian community is very similar to the dynamics that we have in Mexico. Not for the most positive reasons. One of the issues that I think we share, that we have to work in as a community, is spreading information for people that's accurate, right? So many years ago, you should know, about 10 years ago, there was a humongous fraud issue here in Chicago, that there was this attorney who was an actual attorney, and he was recruiting people from the Romanian community, women, and married them with gay guys, right? And a lot of people got caught doing that. So then Romanians got flagged as a community. They would always, so the people I represented were people who had participated in that, right? Of course, the thing that was interesting is you go to immigration, and you gotta remember this. Mexicans, I can't speak for Mexicans, in Mexico we have a lot of great traditions, but one of our bad traditions is if somebody says, you can't do that, you're like, I gotta figure out a way to do that. No, it's not always a good thing. When people come to see me at the office, and I'll tell you some of the basic things that are going on in immigration today, so you have some real information you take with you. But the best piece of advice I can give you today is if an attorney tells you, I cannot do this, don't do that. Why? Because the only person that's going to lose is you. And one time I was saying to this guy, he kept asking me, I was like, look, you've asked me 3 different ways. I don't think you understand. If I can't do this, I can't charge you. And I want to make money, right? So why would I not want to make money with you, right? Why? Because if I see somebody who doesn't qualify for a certain relief, trying to go around it is not really going to help that person, because down the line, it's just going to cause a problem for them. And I could get my license suspended, which is what happened to that other guy I was telling you about, right? So that's kind of a big lesson for everybody that was involved with that whole thing. Another one of the campaigns that we've been doing very closely with the Attorney General is under the new administration, there is a very aggressive vibe toward immigrants. I think that a lot of the immigrant communities are afraid, and that unfortunately generates a lot of fraud because people are like, oh, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. The law has not changed. The laws have not changed since 1997, okay? There's no immigration reform of any kind. The only thing that has changed is when Obama created the DACA reliefs, okay? That's it. Which now are in litigation because President Trump doesn't want to continue those, right? So that's in flux. One minute you can apply, the next minute you cannot apply. Right now you can, but that could change. And you have to understand what DACA means. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? DACA, right, the Dreamers? So DACA stands for Deferred Action. That actually means deferred action of your deportation. So what you do is you're turning yourself into immigration, and instead of deporting you, the president says, well, I have a right to help witnesses. So let me back up. DACA was created in the law so that if immigration is doing an investigation and they need to help out some witnesses to say, I'm not gonna deport you, I'm gonna let you stay here, you get a work permit, you hang out, you help me out, you testify against that person. Obviously, they snuck into the country, so they cannot fix their papers, right? But I don't have to deport you. That's what DACA is. They took that concept that's in the law, and they said, we're going to extend that to a category of people. And that's how that was created. So it already existed in the law, and then all that President Obama did is do an interpretation that was broader of his powers to apply them, okay? So that's important. Now, another thing that I see a lot is people who do qualify who don't apply for relief. And that's very frustrating for me, right? So, it's frustrating because with all the problems that a lot of people have with the immigration issue, if you have a right, why don't you exercise it, right? So of course, all the lawyers were always gonna tell you, become citizens if you can. Why? Because you can vote, you can immigrate your families, etc. That's number one. Number two, if you're a US citizen, and you marry somebody, right, who came in with a visa, you can get papers for that person pretty fast. Pretty fast these days is more like 8 months, so that's not really super fast, but in the world of the immigration that takes years and years, that's pretty fast, right? That's number one. Number two, if you are a US citizen, you can still file for your brothers and for your sisters. I always say jokingly, it's like being Catholic, right? It's like when we go like this, we go to church. So you can immigrate your parents, your kids, your brothers, and your spouse. So that's a good way to remember that, right? Not the cousins, not the uncles, right? It's not the whole family. It's just the immediate relatives, okay? So when we do these workshops, somebody's like, well, what's the wait time for Romania? I don't know. Last time it takes like 12 years, 15 years for, do you guys know?
12.
Okay. Somebody's like, oh, it's too long. It's like, yeah, well, you wait more. It's going to be more years. So if you have a relative, if you have a brother or a sister that you're thinking down the line, do it now, because one of the things that is likely to disappear because of the wheeling and dealing that's going on in Washington is the brother category, the sibling category. That is the first thing that's going to go, okay? Now the good news is that yesterday we had a meeting with our new Congressman, Chuy Garcia. You guys remember Chuy Garcia, our for mayor?
Yeah.
And he was speaking before a back room of Latino leadership, and I was in the room, and he was telling us that they're actually proposing, like taking the DACA concept and making it a real law to help people. So that's actually going to be coming up for vote. So we're very excited about that, okay? The reason I'm bringing that up, you're probably thinking, well, what does that have to do with anything with the other thing? It has everything to do, because in order to pass that, who controls the Senate? The Republicans, right? So the Democrats get the House, the Republicans get the Senate, so they're gonna say, okay, you wanna pass that? Well, maybe we wanna change this and this, okay? So keep your eyes and your ears open for that, because that could be something that, and then we're gonna have to do more workshops, tell people what the new law is, but that's okay. I think we're due after, what is it, how many years? Almost 30 years to the same thing, right? Another thing that's important is to understand where you are, right? I talk to a lot of people that, you know, I got detained, but I never went to court, and I know they deported me, or I married somebody, and I submitted half the application, and then we got in a fight, and we ended up getting divorced, and I don't know what happened with that. And that's a problem for you. So one of the things that we can do that's super cheap, and that you should do as fast as you can do, either myself or any other lawyer, is file what's called a FOIA request. A FOIA request is a Freedom of Information Act request that gives you access to your own immigration file. So if you know people who are in that situation, have them file a FOIA request. Now the fear always is immigration gonna come get me in the middle of the night? Probably not, okay? That's why you have to use an attorney, so the attorney can send your thing, and then it goes to the attorney's office, and then when it arrives, about 6 months of the fast time to 2 years. I would say most of my cases take like 2 years to get that little CD. But now, one of the things that's positive is that immigration now sends you your entire file in a CD, right? And then you can print it or whatever, you can take it to various lawyers to get quotes, so it's a very good thing to have, okay? And so those are the most important things that I wanted to share with you today, that the law hasn't changed, that you always have to watch out. And I think we've driven the point home, right? When you go meet with an attorney, we do different things, right? Now, at my firm, we do immigration, we do family law, we do real estate, and we do corporate work, right? They all kind of go together, right? And then if somebody has an accident, we also have an attorney, that's all he does, and we refer that out to that person, right? So when you go see an attorney, ask him, what areas do you practice? We have a website where you can see if there is complaints filed against us, if we have been punished for taking money from people. That's very easy. That's the advantage with the lawyer, right? It's IARDC, is the Illinois Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. And all you're gonna do is type into Google, complain about attorney, and it'll take you right there, okay? You can look us up by name when we started to practice, where we went to law school, how many children we have now, how many children? But everything else, not yet, right? But it's important. It's important because I think that a lot of times I see practitioners, right, who get involved with immigration that don't understand the immigration process. So most areas of practice are very simple. You learn the area, 90% of the work you're gonna do is the exact same thing over and over and over. Immigration law changes consistently because there is a lot of interpretations of different things. I will give you an example. One of the problems we have in our system of immigration is that there's a federal, right? Immigration is a federal law, so it applies nationally, right? So the Congress, they said, you know what? In 1997, they were very much against cocaine. Cocaine was this huge issue for them, right? Crack cocaine. So, in the law, if you get caught with marijuana, you can get bail if immigration catches you, right? I mean, unless you get with 40 pounds of marijuana, obviously not, right? But what I'm saying is, no, but you know, if you get caught with some marijuana, even half a kilo, you can make an argument to get out. All right. You're probably dealing though, if you have half a kilo of marijuana, right? Or bad knees, either way. But the law allows that, right? However, if you get caught with a little rock of crack cocaine, you don't qualify for bail, right? That makes no sense to most criminal practitioners, because they're like, wait a minute. Obviously, the dude that has half a kilo of marijuana is dealing dope, and this other idiot went out and wanted to get high and bought some crack cocaine, right? I would never do that, but he did, or she did, right? So the rules in immigration court don't really make sense from that perspective. To make matters worse, when Congress enacted the law, they said, okay, here's the list of things that you shouldn't do. But those things vary state by state by state. And so there are, I'll give you an example. Here in Illinois, if you go and you steal something from a store, right? You can qualify for what we call a diversion program. So, you go into Macy's, you really like a blouse, you forget to pay for it because you put it in your purse while you were changing out, and then you get caught, right? The state's attorney is probably going to be like, you don't have any background, you really shouldn't have done that, but it's not the end of the world. So we're going to let you take all these classes, do all this community service, and then we'll divert your prosecution. So then when you come back, they said, did he do his classes? Yes. Then you should say, okay, case dismissed, they dismiss the charges. If you go to Wisconsin, which is right next door, right? So instead of going here, you went to Kenosha, to the outlets, exact same pattern. In Wisconsin, in order for you to participate in their program, you have to plead guilty first. So you admit the facts, okay? How do you plead? Well, we're going to plead not guilty, but I will admit to these facts if you will allow me to participate in this program. Guess what the immigration prosecutors do with that? This person has committed a crime involving moral turpitude and should not get bail. And that person that was in Wisconsin is not going to get bail, and the person that was in Illinois is going to get bail. In the exact same facts, under the same federal law, because the state law is different from state to state. So, the lesson in all of this is, if you have been detained at any point in time, and you're an immigrant, even if you are a legal permanent resident, okay, I'm not talking about undocumented people. First, don't travel outside the United States. Because back in the day, right, when the administration was a little bit friendlier toward immigrants, you could go back home, and then when you came back, they would say, oh, we found, because you know how they take your fingerprints when you come back in through the airport? Oh, there's a hit. I tell you what, you go, bring us a certified disposition, and then we'll hold on to your passport and we'll see you. That was their way of giving you a little bit of a break, because really what happened is you went and got the disposition, you brought it to them, and guess what they were going to do? Oh, thank you. Oh, by the way, you can't leave. Boom. Deportation proceeding. Because 20 years ago, you made a plea on, and I'll tell you a real case. I had a lady, came home, found her husband with somebody else, grabbed the gun from the closet, his gun, and went like this. That's what she did. So when the police showed up, right, with the ruckus and the yelling, right, they said, hey, what are you doing? Arrested. She got probation on using an unregistered, what's it called? It's called unlawful use of a weapon, UUW. Yeah, UUW, okay? She took a supervision on that. Well, guess what? That made her a deportable offense, right? And she got into this, and that happened 20 years ago. And who was the victim in that scenario I gave you, really? Her husband. No, but you know what? If the world were perfect, what she would have done is, number one, her criminal attorney would have asked, oh, are you a resident? Let's talk about that. What are the best options we have? Maybe we will take it to trial because we can't afford to plead to anything, etc., right? But that doesn't usually happen. So, what we do now is the immigration practitioner identifies the case, and then we work with a criminal attorney to try to clear the record. So, now, they detain you right at the port of entry, and they admit you. Here's the thing that's hard about it. So, if the lady had not left the United States, she would have been fined, because then immigration would have served her with what's called a notice to appear, which is a charging document, and said, 20 years ago, you committed a deportable offense. And then the immigration guy would be like, that's okay, she's been good, she's, you know, the one that's a breadwinner, she's supporting her children, she's taking care of the grandchildren, so bring it on. But on the trial you have 80-20% of winning that, right? However, if she's coming back into the States, she gets charged as what's called an arriving alien. And you don't get a chance to put on that defense. The only defense you can put on is a defense of asylum. Or, you know, it depends where the person's from, right? So if they're from England, you're going to, really, in England you can't go back to England because the government's going to prosecute you over there? It's very different than if you're from Burkina Faso, right? So that's depending on where you're from. I guess the point is, you know that some point in your life or somebody that's important to you has done something like that, this is the time to make that analysis, because now it matters. Before, not so much. But things unfortunately have changed over the last 10 years. Obama is the one who started this, by the way, so we cannot just blame it all on Trump. But it's a growing trend now, and they're getting a lot tougher on that. Okay? So I will leave you all with that great news, so that you can go back to your loved ones and say, well, we have some homework to do, right? If you guys ever need me, I will give you guys all my cell phone later, my number, so you can call me. Just text me, come by the office. I don't usually charge for the consultation, okay? But
we're open for questions and answers for the three of us, so.
Any questions? No, we're good. Okay, thank you. No, really, are there any questions? Are we good?
No questions at all?
Okay, yeah.
How much leeway do lawyers have towards solving cases you've been here X amount of years, over 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have no lawful presence, you have everything, social drivers, all that.
Yeah.
Happens is you get flagged, you go to immigration proceedings and all that. Proceedings being, you get just flagged, basically.
Yeah.
How much leeway do lawyers now have to obtain status, relief, anything for that person based on how long you've been here?
Okay, that's a very good question. I'm happy you brought that up because that's something that I probably should have explained. Because I get this question all the time. People say to me, so is it true that because I've been here a long time, I can fix my papers that way, right? People think, oh, you've been here more than 10 years, you can fix your papers. Here's what the rule is. The rule is that if you have been here more than 10 years, okay, and you have not left and come back in those 10 years, okay? Unless there's an exception for brief and casual under 3 months, whatever, right? I think it's under 6 months. But generally, you've been here 10 years solid, at least. And you have a qualifying relative, a child, a brother, right? Or a parent, right? That depends from you. And you have no criminal background that makes you ineligible. Now, somebody who has 2 DUIs can still get that relief, right? So when I say no criminal background, I'm saying no criminal background that makes you ineligible under the standard. And there's a whole list of things like crimes involving moral turpitude versus DUI. DUI is not part of the list. Only if you have 3 or more, right? That makes no sense either, but that's just the way it is. So depending on what you've been convicted of, right? So let's say you have 2 kids, one's 4, one's 10, okay? Married to a U.S. citizen, but she never filed for you, okay? Or you're not married, you just live with her and have the 2 kids. You can ask to stay here, but the standard is not how this is going to affect you. How is this going to affect the U.S. citizen children? So it depends. If your children are 4 and 10, even if you get your trial in 5 years from now, because again, immigration is so backed up with all these cases of these children, right, that are coming in the border, just put them on the system, so they get backed up like that. You're gonna get your trial 3 to 5 years out from the time you get detained. So there is always the danger that your children will age out, right, 18 or older. But here we're saying what? Do I say 6 and 10, right? So you're gonna be okay. So the child's still gonna be in school, elementary school, middle school. So I think you have a fairly good argument that if you were to be removed as the main breadwinner, you can stay in the country, okay? With those facts. But again, every case is different. And it depends what you've been convicted of or not. I don't mean you, I mean general, okay?
You cannot initiate such procedures unless you have to wait.
Unless immigration catches you.
Exactly.
However, let me flip it up. That's why I said, if you are married to a U.S. citizen, it doesn't matter if you came documented or undocumented. If you came with an inspection, then that's great because then you just get your papers and you're done. Even though you've worked illegally, even if you stayed here for 10 years, if you came in with a visa and had an inspection or the visa waiver, had some inspection, then you can file your papers. If you snuck in, you can also file your papers. Because the one thing that Obama did is, okay, well, you cannot do everything here, but you can file for a waiver. And so what he said is, you can file the waiver here, and if it gets approved, then you can go get your visa. Okay?
How long would that?
I don't know. That process, instead of 8 months, could be between 2 and 5 years. Depending on your nationality, depending on many things. Yeah, for the Europeans, it's a little bit different than for the Mexicans, or the Mexicans are better off, because Mexico's right here. The Central Americans, the South Americans, you gotta go all the way back there. The Africans, later, you know. So, but that's a very good question. Anything else?
No questions?
I have a question for the lady.
Yes.
Does your office cover fraud committed against small businesses? Let's say you have a small business and you're not getting paid by a bigger business.
If it's just for if a small business purchased a product or a service that they didn't receive, then yes.
If the small business provides services for a bigger service.
No, that's the opposite. So the small business has to be the consumer.
If you want, let me give you guys my cell phone. If
Well,
you ever
the
need
cell
it,
phone.
get ready. for a good time, call. Just kidding. You have a question?
No, I just wanted your number.
Okay. It's 773 715 5013. I'll repeat it. 773 715 5013. And my last name is Cicero, like the street, not Ptasznik. Cicero, C-I-C-E-R-O. The Roman guy. Yeah, but we're Mexican. Are you Italian? I guess I'm Italian.
Like the street, no?
Like the street, that's right. Okay.
And I have a question. Do you think there's going to be an immigration reform soon?
Well, we're gonna have proposals. Whether they'll get it done, that's a whole other different thing.
What's wrong with the lottery visa program? Why they want to cancel it?
Because it's just it's a historical thing that has existed there from the beginning of the system. I personally don't think it's a huge burden because it's only 100,000 visa a year. It's like nothing, you know. So that really is just actually, if they did away with it, it would be like it would have no impact. The real problem is there's not enough visas for workers. Okay, and that's the number that they need to increase. Okay. Well, thank you for having us.
Well, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
That's because we were so clear.
We'll get it better after all these years. Can we take a picture with you? We'll put it so we can be.
You can pick us any information.
Nettie, let's take a picture.